Would you give up sex for the rest of your life if it meant you'd finally have community, purpose, and people who actually gave a about you? I just watched The Testament of Anne Lee, and by the end, I was seriously considering it. The film is about Anne Lee, founder of the Shakers in America. She demanded celibacy. She rejected marriage. She built a community around physical denial and spiritual clarity. She gave people structure, care, and meaning, regardless of race, gender, or sexuality. By the end, I wasn't analyzing her belief system. I was wondering why I don't have one, why I can't commit to anything the way she committed to everything. This movie is for you if you want to see one of the best performances of the year, if you can handle a 2-hour period piece that moves like a meditation, and if you're interested in films about belief that don't tell you what to think. I would say this movie is not for you if you need clear answers about characters' motivations, if you want religion either condemned or celebrated. My verdict, it's challenging, beautiful, and made me consider joining a community I fundamentally disagree with. Let's dig in. The film opens with an overhead shot of women in peasant-like outfits wandering through the woods. Then it cuts to Mary with a cloudy eye, staring directly at the camera. And I went in totally blind. I was like, okay, this is gonna be spooky, a horror movie about a cult. About 20 minutes in, Anne attends her first Shaker meeting in Manchester. A woman stands up and explains that God is both man and woman, that Christ came once as a man, so the second coming has to be a woman. I was raised Catholic. I still have family that attends church every weekend. I know what religious conviction looks like. Then a man confesses to coveting his sister. People move closer. Someone starts making a huffing sound. An older woman comes up from behind him and begins wailing. The energy shifts, breathing gets louder, bodies start moving, and then they dance in this choreographed and synchronized way where everyone knows exactly what to do. I started imagining my family's church doing the same thing, breaking out of the pews mid-mass in full choreography. The Shakers channeled energy into spiritual devotion. What you're watching is that energy being shifted through movement, a space where you could confess the ugliest part of yourself and be met with closeness instead of shame. When was the last time you were in a room like that, where you could say the thing you're most ashamed of and people would move towards you instead of away? Anne is arrested for disrupting the peace and thrown in prison. But before that, Anne and Abraham met at a Shaker prayer meeting. They married. Abraham told her he'd confiscated a book from an employee that had something like the Kama Sutra, but for British people. And there was one position in particular he wanted to try. That's the only way they had sex. Anne had 4 pregnancies, 4 difficult births, and at one point, Anne is splayed out on a table, bleeding heavily, and they're using cloth to try to stop it. The camera doesn't linger, but it doesn't need to. You see enough. Later, you see Anne trying desperately to breastfeed, and the child won't latch. The panic in her face is unbearable. None of the children made it to age 1. And Anne believed God was punishing her, not for having sex, but for how they had sex, for treating desire like something to explore instead of something functional. I understood her thought process completely. Through her eyes, she was right. Sex brought her pain and loss. Of course, celibacy becomes the answer. In prison, the song Hunger and Thirst plays, which did not know this was a musical. I've heard of fasting to bring yourself closer to God, but I never understood what that actually meant. Watching Anne in that cell, hunger empties her out. When the body loses its anchor, belief becomes the only structure left. Anne has a vision of herself as a Christ-like figure. The film doesn't care whether it's real or delusion. When Anne is released and returns to the group, she does impose celibacy as a commandment. And having seen what she went through and what she saw, that's what stayed with me. It felt good to watch someone who knew exactly what they believed in and why. Then the community moves to America. Anne finds Mrs. Cunningham almost immediately, sitting on her front porch and says, "God said you would let us stay here." What impressed me about this scene is that the film doesn't make Mrs. Cunningham look gullible. She has a curiosity about the world and about people, even though she doesn't share the Shakers' beliefs. I have that same curiosity. I want to understand people's differing viewpoints, even when I don't share them, especially when I don't share them. Sitting there watching the scene, I thought, maybe I could be a Shaker. Maybe this could work. Then dinner happens. 2 young followers who journeyed to America with Anne sit at the table. They keep staring at each other, longing looks. They excuse themselves separately throughout the meal, and you know exactly what's going to happen. They meet in the outhouse and have sex. A follower named John discovers them and tells Anne they plan to marry. This is where I thought Anne might explode. I thought she'd punish them and cast them out with venom, but she doesn't. They're told to leave, but it's with a sadness and a quiet discomfort that it will be very hard to find people willing to commit to celibacy. It made me empathize more with Anne because she's not being cruel, she's protecting the structure she built, and she knows how fragile it is. Abraham is still her husband, and he still expects what husbands expect. When Anne refuses him, he doesn't argue. He hires a sex worker and brings her into their home, into the same room, and he her while telling the woman she's his new wife now. I felt horrible for Anne watching this, but I understood Abraham's anger. You marry someone and then you tell them they're married to God instead. But what he did was unreasonably cruel. I wanted Anne to leave that room. I wanted her to walk out, but she doesn't. The camera holds on her face as the transaction unfolds, and it's devastating and humiliating to watch. What surprised me is the film doesn't make Anne a victim here. She endures it. And when it's over, her belief hasn't wavered. If anything, it's stronger. Because Abraham just proved her point. Sex is not intimacy, it's control. And if you remove it from the equation, you remove the power men have always used to keep women in their place. From this point on, celibacy isn't just personal conviction. It turns the body into something no one else can claim. There's a scene and character I haven't mentioned yet that stayed with me. William, who's Anne's brother, is in bed with someone, and you can't see their face. William gets up, gets dressed, and addresses this person by a masculine name. He tells the person he's leaving for America. It just shows you what William is giving up. I'm gay, and watching William make that choice, I understood the weight of what the Shakers were asking. And William does this willingly, because he sees his sister as a leader worth following. The Shakers don't stay at Mrs. Cunningham's forever. They find land and build their own church, a physical space where they can live in the equality that they're preaching. Men from the town descend on them without warning. They burn the church, they whip and beat William, they attack Mary, they accuse Anne of witchcraft, of not being a real woman. When it ends, Anne crawls through the snow to her brother. They're carted home together, and I assumed William survived. The film moves forward, time passes. We see the community working, women and men working side by side, adults and children, a black woman working alongside a white woman doing the same labor under the same conditions. The Shakers believed celibacy freed them from the hierarchies that sex and marriage enforce. Without husbands, wives, bloodlines, or inheritance, labor could be shared equally with no one above anyone else. Then we cut to an apple orchard, where Anne is sitting on a crate. Mary walks towards her, and that's when I see it. Mary's cloudy eye. The same cloudy eye from the opening shot of the film. The one that made me think that this is going to be a horror movie about a cult. Anne looks at the apple tree and says something I'll never forget. She talks about how the apples are like the followers. Some will fall, others will hold on. Then those ones will fall as others continue to hold, and so on and so on. It's a beautiful metaphor, and the fact that it felt so beautiful is the part that stayed with me. Because eventually, a tree loses all its apples. This movie could have flattened Anne Lee into a simple character. A villain, a victim, a saint, a charlatan, but it didn't. I was afraid I'd get voiceover that tells you Anne's psychology. Whether she's manipulating people or genuinely believes what she's saying. Whether she's traumatized by her marriage, or power-hungry or delusional. The narration in this film provides context, but it never diagnoses her. I was afraid they'd make the Shakers look ridiculous, showing you people who are clearly delusional and felt superior. But instead it shows you people finding care, structure, and meaning. You see why they stay, even if you don't believe what they believe. The film watches Anne Lee build something real out of belief. It shows you the cost without telling you whether the cost was worth it. And does that work? Mostly. I'm giving The Testament of Anne Lee an 8 out of 10. Amanda Seyfried makes a woman who believes she was the second coming of Christ completely human. The burial sequence is moving and devastating. The music, songs like Hunger and Thirst and Beautiful Treasure's Funeral are major highlights. But I will say some knocks against it are the voiceover kept pulling me out when I wanted to sit in Anne's uncertainty, and the pacing slows and gets repetitive at times. That final song and sequence where the Shakers sing and dance around Anne's grave is one of the most moving things I've seen in a film. The choreography is beautiful, the music is devastating, and the burial feels earned in a way most endings don't. That sequence made me forget every complaint I had because in that moment, the film trusted itself completely, and it really paid off. After the movie, I did some research on the Shakers. First of all, on the Wikipedia entry, it has the most unflattering portrait of Ann Lee. Look at it. She's got like a bulbous forehead. Fortunately, now she gets to be remembered as Amanda Seyfried, so at least history gave her that much. But a more important detail stayed with me. Because the Shakers were celibate, they adopted children. They raised them with the understanding that once grown, those children were free to leave. As I mentioned, I grew up Catholic. I don't believe in it anymore, but when I visit family, I still go to church with them. There's something about being in that physical space. It's almost meditative. It gives my mind a pause I don't get anywhere else. But I also know I couldn't sit in that pew with a boyfriend the way straight couples do. I couldn't hold his hand during Mass. The space that offers me calm only works if I show up alone. I think that's why the Shakers' approach to family stayed with me. Catholicism taught me that family meant marriage and children, that sex and family were inseparable. The Shakers dismantled that completely. They said you could have family, community, and care without sex, without marriage. If I ever have children, I want to adopt. Not only because I'm gay, but because I'm drawn to the idea of choosing care. The Shakers understood that. And maybe that's why I keep thinking about them. If you felt that pull too, I don't think it was an accident. I'm 35. I keep telling myself I'll figure out what I want later. I'll commit to something later. I'll build something later. Ann Lee died at 48 knowing exactly what she lived for. And I can't say the same. So here's my question. If a community offered you actual equality, no hierarchy, no exploitation, no performance, but the price was celibacy, would you take it? I make videos like this every week. Movies that refuse to resolve cleanly, that have you sitting with something uncomfortable. And if this kind of unresolved tension is your thing, please subscribe. Please watch my other movie reviews. And thank you for watching. Damn, that was tough.